All right, it's the boy Blackbeard. I'm back. What's happening? Salute. What we're gonna do in this tape is of course, we're gonna kind of dig a little deeper into the history, but basically, I want to cover the mass amalgamation because a lot of the times when people hear the Yakub experiment, people are starting to think about test tubes, syringes, you know what I'm saying, cloning facilities, and all this different type of stuff. But a lot of the times we make this stuff a lot more complicated than what it really is. So today I'm going to show some pictures. We're going to go through a series of pictures and get an understanding of the amalgamation basically that happened between, the Aboriginals here in the Americas, the Moorish brother and sisters and cousins that we have across the Atlantic, and we'll say the different pale skinned people that were across the Atlantic with these extended family members of ours. Now, also what I want to do is show a lot of pictures of these so-called quote unquote, Moors of Europa. Because when I start showing you all these pictures, you're going to see that they look very, very familiar. And the reason why is because you all's family members look just like these people. So although you had people in Europa and although you had people in so-called Africa that were being labeled as Moors, but yet and still these people may have been from an ancient stock that had its primordial origins in the Americas. Let me repeat that. Although you did have a group of people that went into Southern Europe that were named Moors, and we know that some of these people may have come from the coast of Africa. We know that some of these people may have come from the Arabian Peninsula. But what I'm here to tell you is that not all these so-called Moors came from Africa and Arabia. Some of these Moors were coming from even the Americas. Now, this is a part that hasn't been touched much, but we need to look into it. But what I'm presenting to you and what I want you to think about is this. They tell you in 7-Eleven that all these Moors that went into Southern Europe came from Africa and they came from Arabia. But what if some of them came from the Americas? What if some of these Moors that went into Europe that brought culture, that brought literature, that brought food, that brought technology, and basically brought civilization, brought prosperity, brought education and academia? What if some of these Moors came from America? And what if we are their ancestors? And what if when these Moors was getting kicked out of Southern Europe, ask yourself this question. If all these Moors was from Africa and if all these Moors were from Arabia, why would they come to America? Now, we already are thinking that, yes, they came over here for certain colonial purposes, which may be true. OK, but we got to not take sides in this. We got to look at this thing from a logical point of view and from a logical mentality. So we already know about the colonialism. We already know about the Boule dirty Moors. We already know about how they sold us out. We already know about some of the Aboriginal, the high priests, Aboriginal chiefs here in America, how they sold out. OK, we know all that. But what if some of these people that went into Europa were from the Americas? I'm going to pause 5 seconds. I want you to really think about that. Right now, what we're putting in our mind is what if some of these Moors that were actually indigenous to America left their homes in America, went and civilized Europe, stayed over there for hundreds of years, may have been coming back and forth through America and Europe, throughout time. But as far as the full nation of the people, what if majority of them just stayed in Europe? But what if they had origins in the Americas? So you already know about the Moors that came from Arabia. You already know about the Moors that came from so-called Africa. Now we have to think in our mind some of these indigenous people that we call them Moors, these copper-colored people, some of them coming from the Americas. Okay. because now I'm going to introduce to you the concept of Muslim. Now, before I broke down basically the esoteric word Muslim, all right, not Muslim, but Muslim, Moslem, which basically means a person born in peace via the placenta and via the dark waters of noon, which is what you all know of as the waters of chaos in Genesis. So in other words, there is a whole nother culture behind the modern day version of Islam that these amalgamated Arabs are using. There's a difference between the ancient culture of Islam and the modern day Arab religion of Islam. Now, when you break down the ancient culture of Islam, most of you all start to think that that's what they call quote unquote Moorish science, right? But what if what we call in Moorish science, or the basis of Freemasonry, what we'll say, what if this is nothing but natural sciences that was taught here in the Americas? And what if when people learned these different natural sciences here in the Americas, whether it was astrology, whether it was quantum physics, whether it was agriculture, whether it was literature, whether it was botany, and all the other thousands and thousands of disciplines that we were teaching here in America in our esoteric ancient schools. What if when people came here to learn, they left and created their own religions that went with the new civilizations that they were created from their American teachers and American ancestors? Because when you look into the ancient Americas, you see the elements of what we call religion, but the indigenous people here really weren't religious. Now, when we look at the Incan and the Mayan civilizations, some of us seem to think that that may be polytheism, because you see the different little gods that they have in the different little systems. But that's not necessarily what that is. Those are just alchemical principles, or we could say external principles that we were using basically for certain ritual rites. But what if these ritual rites were still just the scientific procedures that was behind the natural sciences that we have? Because when I was in school, when they have the scientific theory, you know, of course you have your hypothesis and all this stuff, but it gets to a point where you have to physically play out whatever it is you are experimenting, whatever it is you are trying to figure out. You have to basically physically play it out so you can measure it that way. So when we say things such as rituals, this is basically just us physically playing out these certain natural sciences that we always study about. Okay? Physically playing out the natural sciences that we've studied about. So, for example, when we see the building of pyramids, the building of mounds, those are just physical expressions of the natural sciences that we studied about. So clearly geometry was something else that was being taught here. Now, before I gave you all the legends of Amaru Meru that they say came from the lands of Mu and the lands of Lemuria and the lands of Atlantis, okay? Those are all just code words basically for the old ancient Americas. And they say in the legends of Amaru Meru that the cosmic brotherhood and the cosmic sisterhood gave Amaru Meru the instructions to take the leftover information that was left on the planet and to create universities and certain schools in Central and South America. This is in the legends of Amaru Meru. This is why I keep hyping this up. And I'm not hearing nobody in this whole Aboriginal American, history thing really talk about that like that. I'm not saying that nobody else has mentioned it, but this Amaru Meru shit got to be looked into, because part of it is Amaru Meru was responsible for creating these education systems or these universities that all these pyramid complexes was really about. And at the basis, or we'll say one of the degrees, or one of the, we'll say, programs that you could get included in within this university was basically the serpentine sciences, the sciences of Typhon, the sciences of Quetzalcoatl. That's why America was known as land of the plumed serpent, because a lot of our sciences was dealing with the serpentine energies, because those are the elemental fundamental forces that are behind every natural phenomenon that exists. Now, we may call them spiritual, but nevertheless, That's ultimately what it is. So for every physical, natural event you see, there's some type of force behind that. Okay? There's some type of power behind that may be not able to be seen. And this power that cannot be seen, this invisible power, this divine power, is also known as the Kundalini, and it's also known as the serpentine power that you see on the caduceus of Mercury or the caduceus of Thoth. Okay? Which basically is just a serpentine energy that exists within the human body that travels up and down the spinal columns of men and women. But our ancestors here in America would take the symbol of a serpent because of the way the serpent moves. And in the ancient primordial times of America, there were a lot of typhonic serpents here. So the reason why you see alligators and serpents in a lot of our pictures is because these were the primordial serpents, the primordial reptiles that were dominating the Americas. So it showed up in a lot of our culture. It showed up in a lot of our symbolism. So when the ancient Chinese, who were also Aboriginal people of copper colored, bronze colored skin, when they came to the Western coast, and although we may have had some fighting with some of them, but after a while it may have been some type of peace, you know. But the Olmec Aboriginal ancestors and some of the Asiatic people who really still look just like us, when they came, you know, these people were intermarrying and stuff like that. That's when you have certain Asiatic features within Aboriginal American. But when these Asiatic brothers and sisters basically went back home to Asia, they took the sciences of the dragon, the sciences of the serpent, the sciences of the snake, and they included that in all their stuff. And it's still there to this day. That's why in China they have those festivals. In Japan they have those festivals with those dragons and those serpents. That shit was popping here. So when these so-called Moors went into Europe, they didn't come from Africa like we are thinking. Even the people that we call the Egyptians. I'm going to give you another example. Now, Blackbeard has a neighbor who is an Egyptian. He's only been here in America for 3 years. But if you all were to see him, you all would call him an African. Because his skin is charcoal black. And I asked him, I said, well, where are all the people in Egypt that look like you? Because we'll never see them on TV. They just show us these amalgamated Arabs and stuff like that. He said, oh, yeah, we there. We all over the place. He said, it's even people there that look like you. So here go a brother who is indigenous to the lands in Africa that we call Egypt. But he doesn't look like the typical Aboriginal American. He looks like somebody that we would say is from Sudan. That's how he looks. Dark skin. To what we would almost say, quote unquote, black or Nubian. So that science of Egypt, when people say Egypt of the West, they basically mean the teachers, you know, that Egypt got their civilization from. And like I said, a lot of the empires in Peru and these pyramid complexes in the Americas, a lot of this stuff outdates these pyramids that you all finding in East Africa. So once again, we're going back to the question. What if some of these so-called Moors that went into Europe and civilized Europe with all the beautiful things that they did, because they helped Europe out. They fixed and cleaned it up. They brought it culture. They brought it what those people called religions. Because in Southern Europe, the Moslems, okay, because also now remember now, a Muslim is not a person that deals with the religion of Islam. A Muslim is a person who was born via peace, born via the dark waters of the placenta and the dark waters of noon. Let me ask you a question. When you were in your mother's womb, did she have placenta in her womb before you were born out of it? So if she did, that means you are a Muslim. Now, the word that I just gave you is going back to the ancient Sumerian, the ancient so-called Tamarian or Egyptian, or basically the ancient so-called American. So we got to understand, when we view Islam, when we view Judaism, and when we view Orthodox Coptic Christianity, you cannot view that stuff as a religion. You have to view it as a culture. Because when these Moors went into Europe, they didn't take it in there as a religion. It was culture. Now, the people that they civilized with this culture, it became religion for them. So their amalgamated children that they had became what we know of as Jews and Arabs. But the mothers and fathers of these so-called Jews and Arabs are indigenous people who just had natural sciences and natural cultures. I'll give you another example. Sometimes when people come around indigenous Aborigines, we do a lot of cool ass shit. And a lot of the times, it just be random. Like, so for example, Blackbeard, a lot of y'all see in my comments, I tell y'all to keep growing and glowing. You know what I'm saying? Just keep growing and glowing, Aboriginals, we just come up with a lot of cool shit. But sometimes the natural things we do, people will create entire phenomenon, you know what I'm saying? And it'll be this whole new popular thing out of what we do. Just look at so-called hip hop. That came from a culture. That didn't come from us trying to do that. They came from, once again, brothers sitting on the block with their little sisters while they out there playing double dutch, bored as hell, with their little chalk and stuff writing on the ground. You know what I'm saying? One brother over there be making damn a bunch of noise with his mouth. Another brother got a bunch of tapes because his mom worked at the radio station. And another brother got an old boom box that he used in the crib when his dad plays gospel stuff. So one day the brother with the boom box is gonna think to bring the thing, and then the person gonna be like, "Oh, I got a bunch of tapes because my mom worked at the radio joint." And then next thing you know, it's this culture that gets created from what Aboriginal people are naturally doing. So once again, a lot of the things that we manifest when we make history, we're not trying to make history. That's another thing. Like when you're making history, you don't know that you're making history. Like when Blackbeard making a tape, I don't know which tape is gonna get the most views. Like I don't know which one you all gonna fuck with the most. You know what I'm saying? Let's say, for example, Nike, when they making certain shoes, like they don't know which shoe people gonna like the most. Let's take Jordan. Like when they first made the Jordans, Michael Jordan thought that the Air Jordan 1s made him look like a clown. He said he don't even like the shoes. The Air Jordan 1s, the red, black, and white ones that we all like, he said when he first saw them, he thought they was like some Bozo the Clown shoes, and he didn't like them at all. Also, too, the red and black #1 Michael Jordans, the NBA was fining him to when he was wearing those shoes because it didn't really match the rest of the team's uniform. But since they were selling, Nike was able to fit the bill, and they didn't care, and they kept paying. You know what I'm saying? When the Bulls was getting fined for that stuff, basically. So look at how a certain culture is created out of certain things. Also, another thing, how Aboriginals, when those black and red Jordans come out, and sometimes we tend to do a lot of crazy things for those Jordans. It's a reason why. Because like I told you all, subconsciously and esoterically, we are connected to that color, black and red. Right here, especially right here in America. So it's a reason why every time them black and red Jordans come out, stuff kind of happens. Because it's a certain frequency around that black and red. We just don't harness the stuff right. That's why we out there shooting each other, fighting each other in line and stabbing each other and all this other crazy stuff and robbing each other for this shit. But the primary reason is because of those spiritual colors of black, red, and white. Because remember, that's what the Yamasee wears. The war paint of the Yamasee is black, red, and white. The color of the Atlanta Falcon, black, red, and white. The color of the Georgia Bulldog, black, red, and white. But anyway, so to wrap up that final point, before we go into these pictures, is that some of these Moors that went into Europe came from America, and the science and the entire civilization that they brought into Europe was entirely American, meaning it came from the West, North, Central, and South America. So if you all want some homework assignments, y'all can look into that, But the ancestors have already laid it out on me that some of these Aboriginals, these Moslems, these people that were born out of peace via the waters of noon, the dark waters of melanin, some of these people came from America. So it will make a whole lot of sense why, when they get kicked out of Europa by their amalgamated children, as we about to really see in a minute, it would make sense that why, when these Aboriginals, these people of Europe Because even if they were indigenous to America, after they had been in Europe for hundreds of years, thousands of years, few thousand years, or let's say that when they went in 7-Eleven, but prior to that they was in the Americas, and when they left 7-Eleven in like the late 1400s, early 1500s, they had been over there for a few hundred years, so they became, basically people from over there. But that may have not been when they were indigenous to. So yes, some of the Moors that were in Europe may have been indigenous to Europe. Yes, some of the Moors that were in Europe may have been indigenous to Arabia and North Africa. And yes, some of the Moors that came into Europe to civilize it came from Africa and Arabia. But I'm also led to believe that some of these Moors that went into Europe also were from America and were indigenous to America. So what we call in Islam or Hebrew cultures, these are just Aboriginal natural sciences. And the way that we would formulate it and put it into our curriculum, when we would teach it and deliver the information in our pyramid universities and schools, we would create these stories. And inside of these stories, we will create alchemical principles and alchemical symbols to explain the science. That is what we call in modern day religion and mythology, people. So when we had these ancient universities here in America, the high priests, the high priestesses, the master teachers, the rabbis, of America, when they would teach this stuff, they would say, okay, how can we get the people to understand this? Because it may be kind of complicated. What we're going to do is we're going to make it into a story, and we're going to create symbols. So the main character is going to be this symbol. The main character's wife is going to be this symbol. The bad guy is going to be this symbol. You see what I'm saying? And then the ancestors will create these stories and come back out and then teach it. So when we hear about the story of Heru, this is one of these stories that I'm talking about. You got to look at what is the natural science behind the mythology, behind the religious story. It's always a natural science behind it, because the indigenous people were not religious. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. And that's why we getting caught up and everybody thinking that these Moors was all just Muslims and Islamic. And it's like, that's not what it is. That's not what it is at all. The indigenous Americans, they were not religious. They were dealing with natural sciences. The Moors and the indigenous Americans are spiritual people. They're not religious. Because like I said, when you break all this stuff down, they all go back to some form of a natural phenomenon event. Like I said, the word Moslem, Moslem, when you break it down, going back to basically people born via peace. But if you go ask an Arab what is a Muslim, he gonna think it means surrendering to Allah. Once again, whatever amalgamated tawny Moor, you know what I'm saying? Whatever, mixed mulatto Arab that went and that was some quote unquote Prophet Muhammad for them in the 700s AD or whatever, and he told them that, then that's what that means for them. Because once again, when we went into so-called Europe, we brought culture. We didn't bring religion. So the people that was there and the mixed mulatto children that was created from us being there, they created religion and they went and spread that stuff throughout the world. And then they end up using some of that shit to come and try to enslave us and make us follow their system. You know what that is? That's called basically being in the Boule. So if you've ever took an oath, you basically are going through the doghouse that we created for dogs. So do you ever see an owner go through a doghouse? Let's say, for example, I own a dog. I'm the owner. The dog basically is my possession. So in the old world, it would be the Aboriginal or the Moor, and basically their mulatto child or the pale savage people that they was, getting out of the caves. The owner or the Aboriginal or the Moor, they're gonna say, okay, I need to get this dog in the house, but he can't come through my door because he's not what I am. So these pale people and these mixed amalgamated people, they're not Aboriginals or they're not Moors. They may be tawny Moors. They may be Janissaries. You see what I'm saying? They may be Mamelukes. Shout out to my brother Hayes. He know who he is. They may be them, but they not the original people. So in order for us to get them through the door, we're going to have to create another little small door or a side door for them. Because remember, dogs can't go through the human door. So the little small door that we're going to create for them so they can enter into the house, and entering the house is basically the human family, entering into human civilization, entering into the human nations, basically getting a nationality. Because you got to remember, Aboriginal people and Moors, these people come from nations. So when we had these amalgamated children and these pale Caucasian people, we had to basically civilize them and bring them into nations. And we did that through what you all know of as Freemasonry. So a lot of the times what would happen is if it was the pale Mankey, or if it was one of our amalgamated sons, one of our amalgamated Arab or Jewish sons, a lot of the times, you would make them go on certain military quests, or basically put him through this real hard trial and tribulation. And if he did good, then he would get his freedom. So in a lot of these mythologies that you all read about, when it shows these pale people and they have to go on this quest or something for this different god or this goddess that made them do something, like, for example, like how they have the bleached out pale version of Hercules and how he had to do all that stuff for the goddess Heru. A lot of the times these were just the stories of the pale amalgamated people fighting for their freedom from their Aboriginal and Moorish mothers and fathers. And we would make them go through a test to get their freedom. And after they passed their test, then they would go through the freedom accepted Masonic system. And then we would teach them a small portion. Remember now, we're not teaching them all our shit. We would teach them a small portion of what we were really dealing with in the pyramid universities of America. So we didn't give them all that shit. Even to this day, they don't have all of it. For example, Blackbeard knows a lot more about this stuff than a lot of Masons. You see? And if Blackbeard were to have a conversation, he probably would have to talk to one of these higher degree Shriners, one of these older degree Shriners. That's probably 50, 60, 70, 80 years old. But a lot of these younger Masons and younger Eastern Stars, Blackbeard knows a lot more than them. How I know? Because I've come across them. And they basically look at me like I'm the master magi. And that's how they typically do. Like, oh, that's the wise man. He's been to the east and the west. Because Blackbeard is indigenous to the west. So when I come across these people, I notice a lot of times they don't really know none of this stuff. So that's another secret out there, for you brothers and sisters listening to this shit, that we actually already are the magi's of this shit. And these people are trying to be like us. So the whole Boule people and all that, y'all getting all jealous of them because y'all see them with money and seeing them with women or whatever. Man, them people sold they soul. And they being a fake version of what we are. So a lot of them listen to my shit. Are you one of them? Anyway. So going through all that, now Blackbeard gonna get y'all into these pictures. Because I also want y'all to see where people that look like this boy Angel, like this guy Angel on YouTube that's been telling y'all that y'all ain't Aboriginal American. Well, what I'm here to tell you is that our children that were in Spain, our children that were in Southern Europe, our Jewish and Arab children that were speaking Arab, some of them were speaking Latin, some of them spoke a little, they probably spoke a little Hebrew, but those people look like Angel. So that's another thing. The people that we fell to, they weren't Caucasian pale people. It was people that looked like your boy Angel. And they were speaking Latin. So so-called Puerto Rican looking people, them kind of folks. It was them. Anyway, let's go through these pictures. So here go one picture right here of basically a Spanish woman and a pale Mankey. But look at the Spanish woman. So that's a woman from Spain. You see her, and you see her holding the amalgamated child. So this is what was going on with the amalgamation. But this is a woman from Spain. So this is the original so-called Spanish woman. All right. Let's go through another one. Let's see. We'll go one by one. Here go another picture Okay. So these are so-called Spanish people right here. Here go the Spanish man, so-called Spanish woman, but this is an amalgamated Spanish woman. And then here go their child. So this is what was going on over there in Southern Europe. These white people look real different. Now this is one from right here in America. Here you have the so-called conquistador, the Caucasian pale amalgamated Spaniard. And then you have the indigenous woman of America. And you see the mulatto mixed child that they have with them. Once again, this is what we mean by the Yakub experiment. All these different people that ain't like each other mixing with each other. You know, these just different people. Here go one of the original nuns of Southern Europe. So the original nuns of the Catholic Church look just like this. Don't this look like a so-called black woman? I got aunts and cousins that look just like this. So are you all too quick to throw these Moors out the window? Because these Moors is y'all people. That's a woman of the Catholic Church. That's a nun right there. Here go another example of one of the ancient Moors of Britain. So when we talk about the British, this is how these people look. So imagine a person speak right like this person speaking the original form of what we call English. So when it says the British and the Americans making a contract or a treaty, it was stuff like this. We was dealing with people like this. We weren't dealing with no pale people. We weren't making no treaties with them. That came later when they started making deals with each other and kicked us out. It's another so-called European woman. Don't this look like a so-called black woman? But she may have been a Dutch. So this is a Dutch right here. Once again, they look just like us over here, y'all. It's the same people. That's why some of y'all got the same last names. It's part of the amalgamation right here. So you see the Moorish king on the left, but look at who his queen is. It's an amalgamated, red-haired, blue-eyed woman, Caucasian. But he got her in a queen position. So now when they have a child, guess who the wealth and the distribution of the birthright goes to? Some amalgamated child. Now you understand who we was falling to. Because the rest of her people were in the caves and they was working as servants and vassals of the people that look like him's plantations. So all her people were working on their farms at this time. So she got raised up, but it don't mean her whole race of people were raised up. She just may have been a harem girl. So it was people like this that we fell to. Amalgamated people. She ain't nothing but a light-skinned so-called black woman. She just been mixed up. Okay? People that look like this. This is who we was falling to. Once again, it wasn't pale people. But what we consider so-called white people. And also, too, these are so-called white people now. So they was coming from Europe, but as far as how the law was presented, they were white. This is another one. This is another white woman from Europe. White as in status, though. A European woman. Don't she look just like one of y'all sisters or moms or aunts or something? And then ask yourself this. If this woman was a slave, why does she have a gold clock in her hand? So once again, these are the royal nobles. And believe it or not, these people are our cousins. So that's why some of these Moors came back over here, because they knew that their ancestors came from over here. They weren't from Africa. So the same way that y'all feel like, no, I'm not an African, and y'all get mad when somebody call y'all African, well, some of these Moors felt the same way because they was American. So they was like, yeah, we may have been over here a few hundred years, but, you know, we still know who our people is. And it's us. That's why they came back. When the German got kicked out, and they kicked all the Moors out of Germany, this is what they was doing. They was beheading them. You see all the Aboriginal Germans right here? See all the pale people right here? You see them with the axe and the blood on it? You see the Moor praying? These are the high priests. You see that halo behind them, the golden halo? Notice though, none of them have halos. Notice no pale people have halos. Only the Aboriginal Muslims have the halos. Then you see the beheaded Muslim right here. So once again, when this shit happened to them, they came back to where they were from. Some of them were from America. Here go a couple of Southern Europe. 2 Moors. So-called black man, so-called black woman. Hey, y'all thinking that we weren't fucking with each other like that and all black men had white women? The fuck out of here. Where another one at? Another Moor. 2 Moors in Europe. So not all black men was doing this shit. For you black women out there that think we was. So this is, once again, these are the type of people we fell to. This ain't nothing but a light-skinned black woman. You see her brown hair is curly, but you notice these Caucasian children she got? Because she went and married a Caucasian man. So these children would probably be considered maybe octoroons, because she may be a quadroon, but these are octoroons because she had these with a Caucasian pale man. But that ain't nothing but a light-skinned black woman. She's mixed as fuck, but that's, ultimately where she came from. Once again, another European. It's another Moor. I got homeboys that look like this. So once again, why would he come back to America if he was from Africa? If he was a noble from over there, that means that they know their own history. They weren't ignorant people. So why were they coming back over here? And here go that picture of Charles V that I was talking about. It says a panel from the painting in the Larco Museum in Lima, Peru. The panel depicts the last Inca Emperor, Atahualpa, and the subsequent first European Emperor of Inca, Holy Emperor Charles V, or Carlos Quinto. All right. So here you can see right here, you have the Aboriginal Indigenous American Emperor, who clearly is a copper colored skinned person like us, a brother. But then over here you have the European, who is now being said to be the Emperor of Inca. So we got to ask ourselves, well, why would Charles Quinto now all of a sudden be the Emperor of Peru? It's one of 2 reasons. Either this is because, once again, we do know about the Spanish fighting against Peru and stuff like that. But once again, now that we know that some of these Moors have been from over here, the whole history has to be looked at different. Because I'm led to believe that the American Empire and that Moroccan Empire, or the original Muslim Empire, what we'll say, that was across the Atlantic. Since the ancient times, we may have had some conflicts and fought each other, but we also had peace and treaties with each other. And there's always been a link. Now, I think it got real muddy when all these amalgamated people that were on the continent of Europe and from the Middle East that these cousins of ours started dealing with. But initially, I think that this is what it was because, when you look at the American Empire and when you look at the Moorish Empire, it's like it's too synonymous. You know what I'm saying? Once again, so this is another woman from Spain. So if this is a Spanish woman right here, they saying that this is a Spanish woman. So if this is a Spanish woman, then what if she was from over here? And what if old Spain or old Florida? What if that was where she came from? Y'all kind of see where I'm going with this now? But once again, this is a so-called black woman from Spain. So your boy Angel is an amalgamation. Let me show y'all where Angel came from. Angel and people that look like him, they came from stuff like this. You see this bleached out Spaniard, and then this Aboriginal Moorish Spaniard right here, the woman. When they had this child, what he did was he went back and got a woman from his clan, not from her clan, but from his clan. And then when they had a child, they kept going back to the pale Caucasian clan. They X'd out the Moorish mother. So these amalgamated Italians, the amalgamated Jews, this is where they come from. They're not original people. The amalgamated Arab. Once again, this is a Moorish woman. They look like black Americans because it's the same stock of people. These people were not Africans. So these people may have not been Africans. They may have been Aboriginal Americans, and just was over in Europe for about 700, 800 years. And then after shit hit the fan, they tried to come home. But when they came home, it was a lot of sellouts with them. It was a lot of fucking agents following them. It was just a lot of fuckery. And then by default, we got messed up. So it's almost like you gotta, somebody come over your house or something and they're your friend, but maybe they got a wild dog with them or something. So by default, the dog around just because you're trying to let your family member back home. And that's ultimately what it was. Or at least that's what Blackbeard think. But that's what the deal is with the history. You know what I'm saying? It was a mass amalgamation. And that's why y'all don't know who was who. See another pale Mankey with another Spanish woman? Just mass amalgamation, people. So that's the Yakub experiments when we talk about that stuff. But anyway, we're going to close it out with this. This is the original Roman. When we talk about the Holy Roman Empire, we're talking about people that originally was running it. It looked like this. So these are the nuns of the Holy Roman Empire right here. All right. But it's the boy Blackbeard. I'm pretty sure this tape will help y'all a little bit. Y'all stay tuned for the next one. I'm out.